Joining us now, running for mayor of Norfolk, longtime Sheriff Bob McCabe. Hey, Sheriff, good to have you with us, man.
Good morning, John. How are you doing this morning?
Great. Lots been happening since we were on last week. All kinds of endorsements going this way, that way. We're going to get into that. Let's get to politics for a second. You posted the other day on your Facebook page that it's now a two-man race between yourself and Kenny Alexander. You've basically written off Councilman Protogyrou as a serious candidate. Why?
Well, I wouldn't say I've written him off as a serious candidate. I think anybody that's in the race is a serious candidate. But, our polling, and I understand Kenny's polling, shows it pretty even, has me up a little bit in mine and has us even and maybe another one. But in both of them, it appears that, Andy is, a distant third. And so, with the low voter turnout, though, you never know, John. And I've never ran in a May election. My prior 6 elections have been in November. And so it's going to be an interesting May 3rd, as you said.
Well, it is. You never know what's going to happen. We're going to be live that night with our election night coverage. And so I'm sure that night, one way or the other, we're going to have you on. Again, to Protogyrou, let me just ask you this. Is his presence in that race, from the surveys that we've seen, that's pretty much playing out. He's a distant third, and we've got this thing right now, a toss-up between yourself and Senator Alexander. Protogyrou's presence in the race, Sheriff, is he taking votes, in your judgment, away from Kenny Alexander or Bob McCabe?
Well, I think the conventional wisdom would be he'd be taking votes away from me. Obviously, if the perception is you have Andy and I, squabbling, which I don't see it from my end as being that, then that's going to help the candidate, because I think most voters they see all the stuff happen at the national level. That we went through a very contentious state Senate race with Frank Wagner and Gary McCollum. So that's why in every race I've done, I've tried to stay positive, because I think for the most part, I know negative campaigning, quote unquote, works. But I just think most of the citizens who are going to come out and vote in this election are just tired of the negative stuff. So conventional wisdom would say he's taking some votes away from me. But, obviously, Andy's got some endorsements from two of the African-American city council folks. So, it's going to be interesting. That's why the dynamics, we've never seen this in Norfolk before, this type of dynamic. And then you throw in the school board races, what kind of turnout is that going to generate? So it's kind of one of those things, and I think that's why most people are looking at it as a toss-up, between myself and Kenny.
Okay, so what about this squabble you guys have got going on? And then I want to get to bigger things that matter, Sheriff. I just got to get it off the table here because it's been played out in the media. There was a FOIA request, I guess, opposition research done by allegedly somebody on the Protogyrou campaign trying to find out about some $5,000 charge that you made. And so you're going back and forth. Now it's in the hands of a judge. Why not just turn over to them whatever they want and be done with it?
Well, actually, John, we're more than we were required to talk in the council. What they were asking for, and I know you have to say allegedly because you're in the media, but, this person was on, Andy's campaign disclosure, gave him $1,100, and then asked for 5 years of a calendar request, which is exempt, and then wanted to have how we spent $5,000 of profits for a marketplace where families can order food. Well, when you don't have profits, then you can't show where you're spending it if you don't have profits, and we don't have profits from it yet. So, and that's what was alluded to. The contention was the $5,000 he wanted how many assaults over the last 3-4 years in the jail. Well, unfortunately, when somebody, not unfortunately, it's just reality, when somebody's assaulted, they have to go up to medical. And that's a private vendor, a third-party vendor. And so they have to go through all of their records for 3 years. And they don't have all their records on site. They have them down in Nashville, Tennessee, which is their home headquarters. And so the $5,100 to $5,000, $4,500 was the price given to us by our medical provider that they were going to charge us to have to go back and research and redact medical information and so forth because of HIPAA and federal laws. So once we gave that figure, the person who sent the FOIA in retracted it and said, okay, I don't want it. And that was over 2 months ago, by the way. This just didn't happen. So, they've been sitting on this for 2 months. We've been told for, at least 6 weeks, be ready. There's going to be some bombs coming your way and all. So this was the first bomb. We're looking forward to going to court. There's not a pursuit to go to court from what we can tell because I think it was more written for the Virginia pilot than it was to go to court. So, unfortunately, that's what was thrown. And then you throw in the fact that, Protogyrou's law firm is going to represent this person, and I think most people saw that it was politics, unfortunately. And I raised $5,000 online within about 3-4 days of this happening with the thing, go Bob, we need you. And a lot of that was probably generated because of the lawsuit.
So, look, this just dirty politics here, dirty tricks or what? Classify it.
Well, I think most people can see that it was more of a political thing. Look, I've been sheriff 22 years, John. We've always complied with FOIA requests. This FOIA request was made 2 months earlier. And so now 2 months later, right before the election, you want to file a lawsuit. Just so happened to be on the same day that I got the Norfolk Police Union endorsement. So I think it's kind of common sense, and that people see that it was politics as usual. It had nothing to do with being concerned about not having being transparent. We're more transparent than most city agencies, and we've got a reputation for that over 20 years.
Sheriff, let's get to the endorsements. Kenny Alexander picking up Governor McAuliffe the other day, then Senator Kane, then Senator Warner. So the endorsements starting to come out. All three major Democrats in Virginia going for Senator Alexander. Do these things mean anything?
I'm not sure that they mean as much as they used to. Quite honestly, I'm hearing that folks are going, when you have all these endorsements coming, and I'm predicting Mayor Frame will probably come in and endorse as well, as weeks go into the campaign. But when you look at it from the standpoint of I have never seen folks that are in Congress, elected officials in Congress, get involved in local politics like I have in this race. Obviously, there's a lot at stake. And so the powers to be in Norfolk have all gotten behind, Senator Alexander. All the money people, all of the mayor's apparatus is running his campaign, ran Mayor Frame's campaign. But, I can remember, I was a little younger, very young, but I can remember Congressman Whitehurst. He was always a model to me. He would never get involved in local politics, because he was up in Congress. And I think when you look at it from a political standpoint, most folks that live in Norfolk, they're not really paying attention to what the Washington politicians are doing. And there's probably political paybacks there as well. But, it seems like it's kind of piling on. I'm waiting for Obama to come down and, maybe come down and endorse, Kenny as well.
Or Biden or somebody like that, right? Yeah,
somebody like that. Yeah, so I don't see it resonating. Now we'll know on the night of May 3rd whether it is or not. I'm proud. When I did my kickoff, I had over 80 folks. Most of them were community leaders, civic leaders, business leaders, and so instead of having 3 to 5 elected officials, I kind of like. Having the grassroots folks that are actually living every day in Norfolk and doing business every day in Norfolk. And if they get behind me, then I feel humbled and privileged.
Well, look, you're very well likely to see President Obama make an endorsement in Norfolk. I did ask you the question because I kind of expected the Maxter to come in and, make a decision on it, because obviously the city ties into the state and there's a lot going on, and he's also friends with Kenny Alexander, so I thought that made sense. I was shocked, though, when he got the backing of our two U.S. senators, because you're right. I was trying to go back in memory to think when was the last time that United States senator in a state got involved in a municipal non-partisan battle. I couldn't come up with any. I'm sure there's some examples out there, but we'll see how it plays out. Now,
if I can add real quick, John, I
ahead.
talked to Congressman Scott Ridgell, who supported me back when I first ran 22 years ago, and this was probably 3-4 months ago. And Congressman Ridgell said, "Look, Bob, I support you. Please tell anybody that you want to, that you have Congressman Ridgell's support. But being in Congress, I just don't feel comfortable getting involved in in the local politics of Norfolk. That's the difference." And and I've been telling people that Congressman Ridgell supports me and so forth, but I respect him for that, for not wanting to interject himself in there, because he's in Congress. He's dealing with other things, and I just think that that's more appropriate. But you know what? It's to each his own. I'm sure Kenny feels comfortable having all these endorsements, and we'll see how it plays out.
I had one councilman on the other day that said, well, he wants to be a cheerleader, and I'm like, well, that's fine, but that's like cheering for the football team when they're down 37-3 and you've got 2 minutes to go. You've got a disaster there in your school system. Poverty is the other issue, high crime. They all tie in. I mean, it's a vicious cycle. Senator Alexander was saying that he was advocating a policy of local intervention where city officials, he said that it's in the budget now, it's in the plan now, would go into homes that are at risk and intervene in trying to find ways to help families and children figure out how to get out of the cycle they're in. How do you stand on that?
Well, I mean, it's easy to say you're going to do some things, and then whether or not it's either A, legally, or B, practical. You're right about crime and the schools all tying in together and the poverty all tying in together. That's why I thought, and it's being received very well when I talk about and I did a lot of research on this, the community schools model, where down in Nashville, kids go to school at 7, 8 in the morning. They don't come home till 6, 7 o'clock at night, and a lot of these kids do not have families, to go home to. So they get all of the services, whether they play activities, whether they play sports, they're in music, whether it's mentoring, tutoring, anything like that. And also health services, medical, dental, is all done at the school, because they create that as the center. And, there's an argument. Some people can argue, well, that's not government's role. Well, it is when you have folks that are living in poverty, and these kids don't have the resources that other kids don't have access to. And I'm going to tell you, in Nashville, in the last 3 years, the high school graduation rate has gone from 61% to 84%, and school discipline problems have been cut in half, almost 50%. And so, there's ways you can address it in a practical way that makes sense. Now, of course, here's the problem, John. We can't force the schools to do this, because we don't run the schools, but we can certainly work together with the school board, because the schools are a third of the city's budget. And so for those who say, which has basically been happening, since I can remember, 30 years, the city council says, hands-off approach, we don't have anything to do with the schools. They just have interaction when they come to them every year for a budget. And that's what I think needs to change. And I've been talking about meeting with them on a monthly, every other month basis, making sure that they have the needs. And, of course, I would stress to make sure the resources are going into the classrooms for classroom instruction, and that the teachers are supported. The number one reason we lose teachers or they don't come here, it's not money, and most people think it's money. It's they don't feel safe in their classrooms. And when they have problems, whether it's verbal assault or physical assault, the teachers are encouraged to handle these things administratively and not go to the Norfolk police to report it. And I've already made it clear that needs to change. When a teacher is assaulted, that needs to be reported to the police. And there's an argument, well, the kids will get labeled. No, sometimes we go too far to try to be politically correct. Sometimes these kids need to get into the juvenile justice system, because that's when juvenile probation officers can go into the home, see what's going on, and sometimes, kids shouldn't be in that particular environment, and they can either, whether it's counseling, whatever support services, sometimes maybe even have to move that kid maybe to a family member until, if that person that is taking care of them happens to be, involved with criminal activity. So that's how you kind of get involved in in the kids' lives, and it's not always a bad thing to refer these folks into the juvenile justice system.
Well, look, you have to do something, and actually certainly having teachers being in intimidating environments with their students is just not any way at all that you're going to enhance the disaster you have there in the public school system in Norfolk. Something has to change. We're going to have you back. We're out of time. We want to thank Bob McCabe for being with us today. More information on his race for mayor, go to bobmccabeformayor.com. That's Bob McCabe, 2 C's, for mayor.com. Hey, Sheriff, thank you for being with us. Good luck.
Thank you, John.
We'll have you back.